Okay, so in this episode, lesson, tutorial, whatever you want to call it, we want to actually go into that cave that is on the first map. And so there's quite a bit of code. In fact, in this starter code, I already added something for you, which is the second map. And having to redo this over again, and we can go over how we got these numbers again, but I didn't want you to have to, type it out. Doing it the first time was enough, I believe. And so let's look at all the things that we need to add, okay? So what we want to do here is we need to define some new variables. So we're going to say let game objects, and so these are all the collidable, interactable objects that are going to be on the screen. And then we're going to have a new array called maps, and we're going to store all the maps of the world and dungeons inside of maps. And then we're just going to say let game map, which is the particular game map that we are on, and it's going to be an object, and it's going to hold a reference of the map that they're at, so the actual tile map, and then also a which objects are contained within that map. Okay, so that'll make more sense as we go through this. And so the first thing we want to do is we have this idea of game objects now. So we have an array where a game object or more are going to be stored. Okay, and so we're going to create that that object, or actually that function that will create objects. So we're going to start with function, and there are better ways now, so you could do like prototypes and stuff like that. But this works just as well for this purpose. You can definitely comment in the comments if you think that the newer way of creating objects is better. But in this series, we're just going to be using function game object, and it's going to be great. It does exactly what we need it to do. Okay, so here we need some properties. And now, normally when you create an object, you want to be able to have a constructor, and that's what this is it's a constructor that creates a game object. And usually there may be parameters that you pass that kind of define what it is. So it sets these private instance variables or whatever, and it kind of defines it like right then and there. But what we're going to do, because there are going to be so many different kinds of game objects and we're going to have so many different parameters, is we're going to define a generic game object, and then we're going to set the properties after we've defined it. And this is going to work so much better than having just a billion parameters that we are going to have to set to false and 0 and stuff like that. So not ideal. So we have a width and height of our object. Since the first object that we're creating is actually portals or entrances to the new areas of other maps, we are going to have a property called new map. And what this is going to be is it's going to be the index inside of this array called maps that the new map is located. Okay. And so when we get to that new map, we're going to need a new link X, and we're also going to need a new link Y. So where are we going to place link at when we get to this new map? And then the last property is probably the most important one, is portal. And so this is what we're going to do when we're going to look at this variable when we collide with a game object. And if it is a portal, then all these things come into play. Okay. Actually, these things are going to be inherited to, are going to be used by all game objects. And so this is going to help us decide if we are colliding with a game object. And once we're colliding with a game object, then we're going to check its Boolean values to see if it's a portal or an enemy or whatever, okay? And so the next thing that we have is so one thing that a map is going to have, a game map, is it's going to have a single map, and this is actually, this maps is going to, it's actually a little bit different than a map, because it's actually a bundle of game objects and a game map, okay? This game map is the actual tile map that constitutes a map, okay? And so we're going to save something in this maps, and it's going to be a combination of game objects and a game map. And so we're going to go ahead and define that right now, and that's going to be called a map bundle, okay? And it is going to take parameters. There's only two parameters here, an M and an O, okay? So one is a map, so this dot map is equal to M. This dot game objects, all lowercase, is equal to O, and that's it, okay? And so now we've defined all of our classes. Most languages, they're called classes, but we've defined our functions that will create our objects. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to add some game objects to this map, okay? So this map is actually going to have like 5 game objects when we're done with it, because there's an exit right here that leads to another map. There's an exit right here. There's an exit right here. And then there's an exit right over here. And then there's an exit right here at this 28. Okay, so those are 5 game objects that we're going to have eventually. But right now, we're only going to have 1 game object, and it's going to go into that cave. Okay, and so we're going to define our first game object by saying let go equal new game object, and then we're just going to define its variables. Okay, and so the first variable is go dot x is equal to 72. Go dot y is equal to 72, and this 72 is where this cave actually is. And so we'll look at how we calculated that here in a second. But basically, this is the pixel value, okay? So this width is a little bit different. I was playing around with it to work to see what worked best with the collider, and you know it seemed to do the job. A lot of this, since we don't know exactly how the original Zelda did it, we are just going based on what feels right, okay? So it's going to be impossible to make Zelda exactly like it was. But we can come pretty close just by look and feel and maybe doing some timings of video play, gameplay, and, you know, come very close. So these are capital O's, by the way. And so here we're going to define our new map. Which map is this portal leading us to? And so this is going to be leading us to 1. And link is going to be placed at 120. Having problems this morning. And 220 on the y-axis. And we're going to set that this is a portal. Finally. Okay, and so now we're going to push these. So this is our objects array. This is the objects that are stored for this map. Okay, and right now it's empty, so we're just going to push this object that we just created for this map into that array. And so this object is called a geo, and pretty much all of our game objects are just going to be geo because we can just reuse this variable as we go down the list. And then we're going to go ahead and define our bundle. And so we're going to say let bundle. Remember, a map bundle is the game objects and the map all as one. And so we're going to say let bundle equal new map bundle, and it's going to take in our map, which is map77. Go ahead and copy that. And it's going to take in our game objects, which is object77. And so this places, well, it doesn't place it yet, but when we say maps.push, and we're going to push this bundle into maps, this places this map at maps at 0. And so this is going to be our starting map. Now, when we have the full world within our game, then of course this number is going to have to change, because this map is actually map 130 or something like that. Okay, something like that. And so as we add more maps, these numbers are going to change. So, but everything else is going to stay the same. So that's a very small detail. And then I went ahead and added the map to the cave. And basically these 55s are going to be the stone. Now, if you look at the map of the cave, when we go ahead and run this, the stone is slightly different than retail version, and I could not find the actual stone that they used in any sprite sheet. Okay, so if you know of a sprite sheet that has it, great, we could probably use it. But otherwise, this is pretty close. Okay, and then this 28 is all the black area where the old man is, and the flames, and the text, and so forth. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and create a few game objects here, and basically they're going to be these 22 28s right here that lead us out of the cave. Okay, so once we get one, we can just copy it, and in fact, we're going to go ahead and copy this. And we've already instantiated GO, so we're just going to redefine it as a new object. So get rid of that let, or you're going to get some problems. And so the portal X and Y here is going to be 112 and 240. And the width is going to be 16 by 16. New map is going to lead us back to the original map, which is 0. And the new link X and Y is going to be 68 and 96. Now, one thing is that this is the array of our objects. And so I'm going to go ahead and change that object array name. Okay. And so I'm just going to copy this. And the next portal entrance is going to be very close. It's just going to be 128 here. And everything else stays the same. And so now we just need to go ahead and create that bundle. So we're just going to say bundle is equal to new map bundle. And this is our map. This is these are our objects. And then we're going to push this bundle to our maps. And so when we say map.push bundle, this is now at index 1. Okay, so that's why the first map led to new map equaling 1. And this one is leading to 0 because it leads us to the 0th index of that map. That map's object. And so now we're just going to initialize our first map, the map that we are currently looking at, and we're going to do that by saying game map is equal to maps at 0.map, and game objects is equal to maps at 0.game objects. Okay, and so now what we want to do is we have these objects in the world, and what we want to do is be able to collide with them. So this is collision for our environment. And so, this is not going to work out the exact same as game objects. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and define a new function. And we're going to call this function GameObjectCollision. And it's going to take in a few variables. So x, y, are objects, and if it is link. Okay, so this is actually going to grow because maybe we want to check to see if our sword that we have thrown or that goes through the air is colliding with an enemy. And so we're going to have an is link and is sword property and so forth and so on. So these are just the first set of parameters. So here we're just going to say if, and I apologize, I'm currently doing this at work, and so the laptop resolution is very, very low, and so it makes it hard for sometimes for you to see all the code on one screen, but we'll make it through this. And so we're going to need a for loop that loops through all the objects. And so we're just going to say let I equal 0 while I is less than objects dot length I plus plus. And then we're going to just check if there's a collision. So if x is less than or equal to objects at I dot x plus objects at I dot x plus objects at I dot width. Okay, so we're checking to see if our x is before his maximum dimension. All right, and then we want to say and our x is greater than his minimum dimension. Okay, so here we're just going to, or our greatest x, so our x plus our width, and so we're just going to say x plus 16. X plus 16 is greater than his minimum dimension, which is objects at I dot x. Okay, and then it's very similar for our y, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this because if it's similar, we don't need to do all that. So we're just going to do y, 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 height. Okay. And so that concludes this if statement. And then what we're going to do is, so we know we are colliding with a game object because we've passed in our game objects. We've just renamed it as objects for this method or function. And so we've collided with a game object. And so what we want to do now is see what we've collided with. We're going to say if objects at I dot is portal. That means we have collided with a portal. What do we want to do? Well, we're going to change our game map. We're going to say game map is equal to maps at objects at I dot new map dot map. So basically, we're using the index that our current map. The index of our current portal object that leads to the new map, and we're saying, well, we're going to grab that from the new maps and set that as our current game map here. Okay, and then we need to do the same thing with game objects, and so game objects is equal to basically the same thing. Copy it, and we're just going to say game objects all lowercase. And then the next thing we need to do is set link x equal to objects.i.new link x and new link y here. Okay, and so that should do it with this function for now. But know that this function is going to grow quite a bit. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to call that function. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say GameObjectCollision, and we're going to say link x, link y, game objects, and we're going to set this to true because it is link that we're checking for these collisions. Okay, and so let's see. Of course, there's an error. So whenever there's an error, what you want to do is you want to right-click on your canvas and go to console, and it's going to tell you exactly where it is because it says this is on line 332. So I'm just going to go to 332 and see what I did wrong. So 332, and it's the double ampersand because that is our closing. We don't have anything after that, so we don't need to put the double ampersand or the and symbol. And so this should work, okay? And so our previous code still works. We can collide. We're colliding with the environment, and I know it's not supposed to exactly go all the way up here, but we'll fix that later. And then now, if we go into this cave, it should work. Uh-oh. Okay, so we make it into the cave, but something's wrong. So he is down here right now, so let's look at that. So it looks like this right here. We are no longer drawing map 7.7. Now we actually have a proper object for our game map, okay? And so now we're going to draw the game map object that we have created because we want that map to change as we change, go through portals and stuff like that. Okay, so let's look at this. And now we are inside the cave. We can't move because we said that movement was defined by the sand type stuff, the beige ground. And so we could change that real quick. Let's do that. And so that's going to be inside of environment collision. And what we want to do is just add a quick and so this is going to be 28. And so we want to say, well, if it equals 28, we want to be able to walk there as well. So we're just going to add an 8 to that. So now we can walk where the map equals 2 and the map where the map equals 28. And so let's go ahead and try this. Uh-oh. Do I get any errors here? Oh, so this should probably be an OR statement, I think. Nope. Give me a second. So map at ij is not equal to 28. Let's see here. Collision XY map. Oh, okay. I got it now. So we're doing collision inside of animate link. So here, instead of map 7.7, because remember this is our static map that we are using, now we're using a dynamic map that is going to change as we move through the levels. And so we're just going to say game map. So wherever you see that map 7.7 inside of the movement code, we're just going to change to our dynamic map now that is going to change when we move into a new map. Okay, And so he collides with walls, he's able to move around, and we have successfully changed maps. Now, can we go back to the outside? Now, so this works perfectly. Now, one thing that a purist is probably saying right now is that we're missing some of the polish, because usually when you go into a new map, there is the transition screen where it kind of like moves down, the old map moves down, and the new map moves up, or the new map moves up, and then the old map moves, further up. It kind of show you that that transition. So ours is like an automatic transition, but when we come back and start adding polish, once we get some of the the fundamental game dynamics done, then that's one of the areas that we'll probably want to focus on, okay, is getting that map transition, correct. Okay, and so that ends this tutorial. We actually went over quite a bit. That's adding a major component to our game. So now we can actually go to other maps. Now, do we have other maps, made out yet? Well, for this tutorial series, we do not. Okay, but we will get there. Okay, but there's quite a bit more that we are still going to do. So in the next video, what we want to do is we want this cave to work. So this cave to work, we're going to need some flames, an old man, some speech that kind of types across the screen, and we're going to need the sound of the speech as it types across the screen, and the wood sword that's going to be right here. So there's going to be quite a bit that's going to be added in the next episode or two, because once we have all those game objects added, we're going to want to be able to grab this wood sword and then have it show up in our HUD. So, that HUD is going to need to be programmed out as well. And so some major changes, some exciting things are going to be added in the next few episodes. And so I'm excited to do it with you. And if you are really liking this series, if you think that we're doing a great job here, then definitely like the video and subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it means a lot to the people that make the videos. So hope you have a good day, and I will probably see you tomorrow.